What takes place when one of Hollywood's most admired actors walks into what he assumes will be a warm, routine interview, only to be blindsided by accusations that threaten to unravel the reputation he has spent decades building. What unfolded that day became one of the most intense celebrity confrontations ever broadcast live. Viewers watching from home had no idea they were about to witness a moment that would dominate headlines and spark endless debate. The morning began routinely at the studio in New York. George Clooney had flown in specifically to promote his newest directing effort, a film centered on humanitarian work in regions torn apart by conflict. He had participated in countless interviews over the years, always presenting himself as polished, witty, and unshakably composed. Nothing about the schedule suggested that this appearance would be any different. Yet there was an undercurrent in the air, a subtle tension that would soon erupt. As Clooney took his seat beside Joy Behar, the cameras went live, transmitting the segment to millions across the country. The crowd greeted him with enthusiastic applause, clearly pleased to see the Academy Award winner in person. Joy offered her familiar smile, the one audiences knew so well. But to those paying close attention, there seemed to be a sharper glint behind it. "George, welcome back," she began, her tone carrying a slight edge beneath its cheerfulness. "We're thrilled to have you here to discuss your new film. Thank you for having me," Clooney replied smoothly, adjusting his tie with practiced ease. "It's always a pleasure to join you." "I'm sure it is," Joy answered, her voice shifting in a way that caused the faintest hesitation in his expression. "Before we get into the movie, there's something that's been on my mind, and I suspect it's on the minds of many of our viewers." The other hosts exchanged quick looks. This deviation hadn't been mentioned beforehand. The energy on set shifted almost instantly. "Of course," Clooney said carefully, his media instincts quietly activating. "What would you like to discuss?" Joy leaned forward, her demeanor turning more pointed. "You've built quite a reputation as a humanitarian voice in Hollywood. You speak passionately about global injustice. You produce films about serious issues. You're married to a renowned human rights attorney. It all paints a very noble picture." "I'll do my best to use my platform responsibly," Clooney responded, sensing the direction but maintaining composure. "But here's the part I struggle with," she continued, her words growing sharper. "How can you present yourself as a moral authority when your past tells a different story?" When we look at who George Clooney really was, the studio grew noticeably quiet. Even the audience seemed to feel the discomfort settling in. "I'm not sure what you mean," he replied evenly, though his jaw tightened slightly. "I think you do," Joy pressed. "If for years you embraced the party lifestyle, gambling, endless relationships, extravagant gatherings, while the world faced suffering, you were Hollywood's quintessential bachelor. Now we're supposed to accept you as a beacon of virtue." Or Poppy attempted to interject, suggesting they steer back toward the film, but Joy continued without breaking eye contact. "You dated far younger women well into your 40s. You hosted lavish events while people around the globe struggled. You starred in films filled with violence. And now we're told you're a reformed figure of conscience." A flush crept into Clooney's face, though his tone stayed measured. "I've never claimed perfection. I've made mistakes, as anyone has, but my earlier personal life doesn't invalidate the work I've committed to over the past decades." "It doesn't it?" Joy countered immediately. "It seems convenient that your activism intensified just as you sought greater credibility as a director, just as your career needed reinvention." "But that's not accurate," he said, the first hint of irritation entering his voice. "My involvement in humanitarian efforts goes back many years. This isn't some calculated rebrand." Joy let out a humorless laugh. "Et soudain, Darfur, those causes gained visibility for you right when your box office appeal started shifting. The timing is interesting." The co-hosts looked increasingly uneasy. Sarah subtly shook her head. Sunny studied her notes as if hoping to redirect the segment. The atmosphere felt heavy. Then there's your wife," Joy continued, drawing audible reactions from the audience. "Amal Clooney. Brilliant, accomplished, respected worldwide. Do you honestly believe she would have married you if you weren't an international movie star? Or did she fall for the brand you represent?" Clooney's hands tightened around the arms of his chair. "I'm going to stop you there. Criticize me all you want, but leave my wife out of this. A why? Joy challenged. Isn't she part of the transformation? A refined image replacing the carefree playboy. She elevates your credibility. She makes you appear serious. That's completely inappropriate, he said, his voice dropping lower, firmer, carrying a restrained intensity that briefly halted her momentum. But Joy pressed on. Her people aren't naive. They can recognize a carefully managed persona. Perhaps you've embodied this role so thoroughly that you believe it yourself. The studio fell into complete silence, broken only by the faint mechanical hum of equipment. Clooney held her gaze for several long seconds. When he finally spoke, his tone was controlled, almost calm. But beneath it lingered unmistakable steel. Joy, in 3 decades of giving interviews, no one has ever addressed me the way you just did. And absolutely no one has dragged my wife into the middle of it like that. And maybe that's because no one else was willing to. Joy shot back, her tone unapologetic. And maybe it's about time someone stopped showering you with admiration simply because you're George Clooney and started pointing out the contradictions. Clooney gave a slow, deliberate nod, as though settling on a course of action. When he lifted his gaze again, the calm exterior he was known for had shifted. There was a sharp intensity in his eyes that stunned everyone at the table. What followed would be replayed across networks and social media for days. You want to talk about contradictions? He said, his voice slicing through the heavy quiet in the studio. Fine. Let's talk about contradictions. Let's talk about someone who sits at this desk every day claiming to champion women's rights, yet routinely criticizes and undermines accomplished women in this industry. Joy blinked, caught off guard. This was not the affable movie star she had expected to spar with. Excuse me? You heard me, Clooney continued, leaning forward. How many times have you used this platform to scrutinize actresses for their decisions, their appearance, their relationships? How often have you reduced talented women to discussions about who they're dating or how they look on a red carpet? I have no idea what you're referring to, Joy replied, but the certainty in her voice had thinned. Really? He countered. Because I distinctly recall you dedicating an entire segment to whether Jennifer Lawrence was too young for her husband. I remember you questioning Scarlett Johansson's parenting because she chose to continue working after becoming a mother. Should I list more examples? Whoopi attempted to calm the escalating tension. George, maybe we should all just take a breath. No, he said firmly. Joy wanted to go there. Let's go there. He never broke eye contact. You accuse me of crafting an image? Let's discuss how you've built yours. Controversy, sharp commentary, provocation. You've made a career out of saying the harshest thing in the room. Joy's cheeks flushed. How dare you come onto my show and attack me like this? Your show. Clooney let out a short, humorless laugh. This is The View, not the Joy Bahao. And I'm not attacking you. I'm holding up a mirror. I'm applying the same scrutiny you just directed at me. It doesn't feel very good, does it? Feel very good, does it? Oh, this is completely inappropriate, she snapped. I'm a journalist asking valid questions about your public image. A journalist? His voice rose slightly, no longer entirely restrained. Joy, you're a comedian who landed a seat at a talk show table. Don't conflate that with investigative journalism. When was the last time you dug into a real story? When was the last time you put anything on the line for the sake of uncovering truth? The other host sat rigidly, visibly uncomfortable. Sarah looked as if she wished she could disappear. Sonny stared down at her hands. The studio audience remained utterly silent, witnessing the clash unfold without interruption. I've worked in this industry for decades, Joy insisted, trying to steady herself. I've earned my place here. Have you? Clooney challenged. From where I'm sitting, it seems you secured that seat by being willing to deliver the cruel remark others avoid. You've made yourself essential by playing the aggressor, by going for the jugular while everyone else tries to maintain a baseline of respect. That's unfair, she protested, though the conviction behind her words wavered. Is it? He replied evenly. Tell me, what was the strategy today? Did you think I would sit quietly while you dismantled my character? Did you assume I'd stumble under your accusations and hand you a viral clip to boost ratings? Joy opened her mouth to respond, but he continued. Here's what I believe happened, he said, his tone measured but edged with disdain. You saw an opportunity. We saw an opportunity. A chance to challenge someone successful, someone widely respected, someone attempting to contribute positively beyond this industry. And you couldn't resist taking your swing. I was asking legitimate questions about your credibility, she said, though her voice had softened. No, Clooney replied without hesitation. You were attempting to embarrass me in front of a national audience. The words hung in the air. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every strained expression, every tightening jaw. The exchange had moved far beyond a tense interview. It had become something raw and personal. You questioned my integrity, he continued. You implied my marriage is transactional. You suggested my humanitarian efforts are calculated publicity. Those aren't neutral inquiries. Those are insinuations designed to provoke. Joy shifted in her seat, the earlier confidence replaced by visible frustration. Public figures should be prepared to answer tough questions. I am prepared, he responded. What I'm not prepared to tolerate is reckless speculation, dressed up as accountability. The room felt smaller, the atmosphere charged. Crew members stood frozen just beyond the lights. Millions were watching, yet it felt like an intensely private confrontation playing out in slow motion. You don't get to decide that your perspective is the only honest one, he added. And you don't get to attack my family to score a point. Joy's posture stiffened, but she remained silent for a moment. For years, Clooney said, his voice lowering again, I've accepted criticism. I've welcomed debate, but there's a line between constructive challenge and deliberate provocation. Today, you crossed it. You reached back into relationships I had decades ago. You went after my marriage. You implied that my reasons for helping people in crisis are somehow self-serving. That isn't journalism, Joy. That's cruelty. The room stayed unnervingly still. Even the camera operators appeared frozen, aware they were capturing something extraordinary. The usual studio energy had vanished, replaced by a heavy silence. And do you know what makes this worse? Clooney continued, his tone firm but controlled. Oh, you had a real opportunity today. We could have talked about the humanitarian disaster highlighted in my film. You could have used this platform to bring attention to genuine suffering and injustice. He paused briefly, letting the words settle. Instead, you chose to turn it into a personal attack. You made it about scoring points and tearing someone down. Joy's hands trembled slightly. Whether it was anger or humiliation was unclear. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? He replied calmly. Tell me, how much have you personally contributed to charitable efforts this year? How many lives have you directly impacted? Which causes have you supported beyond commentary? I don't owe you an explanation about my charity work. She snapped. Well, you're right, Clooney said evenly. You don't. But by that same logic, you don't get to question mine. You don't get to sit there and imply that helping refugees and survivors of genocide is some elaborate publicity move, while offering little more than cynicism. Whoopi finally stepped in, her voice tentative. All right, maybe we should, should what? Joy interjected sharply, finding a flicker of resolve again. Let him keep attacking me? Let him flip this and cast me as the villain? You cast yourself in that role when you decided to ambush me instead of conduct a professional interview, Clooney answered coldly. You stepped into it when you dragged my wife into a petty argument. You chose cruelty over genuine curiosity. I'm not the one losing control, Joy insisted. Though her voice carried strain, a thin smile crossed Clooney's face, devoid of warmth. I haven't lost control. I'm completely aware of what I'm saying. I'm responding to the energy you brought into this conversation. The difference is that what I've said is grounded in observable behavior. What you said about me was speculation fueled by resentment. Well, you're being unfair, she protested. Am I? He replied quietly. Do you wake up energized by the chance to criticize someone new? Do you go home satisfied with the people you've cut down on air? Joy stared at him, momentarily unable to answer. Day after day, he continued, you sit here and contribute to a culture that rewards mockery. You normalize tearing people apart and call it entertainment. You encourage cynicism and frame it as honesty. The silence deepened. The faint hum of the studio ventilation filled the gaps between words. Audience members shifted uncomfortably, whispering under their breath. Joy Behar, known for her sharp comeback, seemed at a loss. Clooney leaned back slightly, still watching her. The pause stretched long enough to feel almost unbearable, yet he appeared unbothered by it. Finally, Joy spoke again, her voice subdued. This wasn't how this was meant to unfold. How was it meant to unfold? He asked softly. Or was I supposed to sit here politely while you dismantled my character? Was I meant to smile while you questioned my marriage and my integrity? I was doing my job, she said faintly. No, he replied, his voice strengthening. Your job is to interview guests, not blindside them. Your responsibility is to inform viewers, not inject venom. Tough questions are part of the role. Personal attacks are not. Joy straightened in her chair, attempting to regain some authority. You can't just reverse the roles like this. The guest. I'm the host. Dean is the host, Clooney countered. You carry a responsibility to both your audience and your guests, a responsibility you abandoned when you chose to make this personal. Whoopi cleared her throat, clearly uneasy. And maybe we should steer this back to the film. No, Joy said firmly, her confidence returning in flashes. I won't be lectured by someone who believes he's morally superior. You can present yourself as virtuous, but at the end of the day you're another wealthy Hollywood actor convinced your voice carries more weight than anyone else's. Whoa. Clooney's eyes sharpened. There it is. When the argument slips away, you pivot to labeling and resentment. When facts aren't enough, you go for character. I'm not tearing you down, Joy insisted. I'm revealing who you truly are, who I truly am, who I truly am. Clooney rose abruptly from his seat, prompting her to recoil slightly. I'll tell you who I am, he said, standing tall. I'm someone who uses the advantages I've been given to assist others. I'm someone who invests his own resources into relief efforts. I'm someone who visits regions in crisis instead of commenting from a comfortable studio. You don't need to stand, Joy said nervously. Yes, I do, he answered firmly. Because I won't remain seated while you continue spreading falsehoods about me and my family. His voice grew more impassioned. You want to know who I am? I'm someone who has spent millions supporting displaced families. I'm someone who has traveled into dangerous areas to document atrocities the world ignored. I'm someone married to a woman who dedicates her life to defending victims of human rights violations. The conviction in his words was unmistakable, reverberating through the silent studio as every camera captured the intensity etched across his face. And do you know what else I am, Joy? Clooney continued, his voice siddy but charged with emotion. I'm someone who's tired of people like you who mistake tearing others down for substance. Criticism isn't the same thing as contribution. Joy's composure was slipping, though she made one final effort to reassert authority. You don't get to speak to me this way. This is my show. These are my viewers. And my viewers. Clooney pivoted slightly toward the main camera, addressing the audience at home directly. Let me say something to you about your host. Joy Behar has convinced herself that cruelty equals wit. She confuses harshness with honesty. She's built a reputation on sarcasm, cynicism, and diminishing others. Cut the cameras, Joy called urgently to someone off stage. Turn them off right now. No, Clooney said firmly, stepping closer to the table. Stepping closer to the table. You wanted this exchange to play out publicly. You tried to embarrass me in front of millions. Let's keep that same transparency now. Joy scanned the set as if searching for backup, but her co-host looked just as stunned as the audience. Sunny covered her mouth in disbelief. Sarah appeared on the verge of tears. You know what's truly unfortunate? Clooney went on, his tone shifting to something that almost resembled disappointment. You have a powerful platform. Millions of people tune in. You have influence and reach most people can only dream of. And you choose to spend it amplifying negativity. I'm not negative, Joy protested weakly. Oh, really? He replied. No, when was the last time you dedicated a segment to celebrating someone's accomplishments without undercutting them? When was the last time your viewers left this show feeling hopeful instead of drained? When did you last elevate instead of diminish? She opened her mouth, but no response followed. That's telling, Clooney said quietly. You can't even think of an example. Because conflict is what fuels you. Drama is what sustains you. You thrive on confrontation. He turned again to the camera. But to everyone watching, you deserve more than this. You deserve conversations that challenge without demeaning, that question without attacking. You deserve media that informs and uplifts instead of simply provoking outrage. You can't hijack my program, Joy said, her voice cracking slightly. "I'm not hijacking anything," he answered calmly. "I'm responding. You initiated this tone. I'm meeting it." He glanced at the other hosts. "Whoopi, Sarah, Sunny, you're capable of better. You don't have to sit silently while this becomes a vehicle for someone's personal grudges." Whoopi finally spoke, her voice cautious. "Oh, Joy, maybe we should shift gears." "Oh, don't you dare," Joy snapped. "Oh, don't take his side." "I'm not taking sides," Whoopi replied evenly. "Huh, but this has clearly escalated beyond what it should have been." Clooney gave Whoopi a brief nod of appreciation before facing Joy once more. "We came here prepared to discuss a film about genuine human suffering, about crises that deserve awareness. Instead, you chose to center this around an attempt to undermine me personally." He bent slightly so that he was closer to her, eye level. "You assumed I would sit here politely while you questioned my marriage, my integrity, and my motives." His voice softened but grew more resolute. "What you miscalculated is that I didn't build my career by shrinking in the face of hostility. I didn't achieve success by allowing people to trample over my principles. And I certainly didn't marry a woman devoted to justice by being someone who stays silent when values are challenged." Joy looked up at him, and for a fleeting second there was uncertainty in her expression. "So the next time you consider blindsiding a guest," he continued, "the next time you think about turning someone's personal life into fodder for entertainment, remember this moment. Remember what it feels like when someone refuses to accept that treatment." He straightened and addressed the camera once again. "And to those watching at home, you have agency. You decide what kind of content thrives. You choose which voices receive your attention. The media landscape reflects what audiences reward." With deliberate calm, Clooney reached for his microphone, unclipped it, and placed it carefully on the table. The small movement felt monumental in the charged silence. Without another word, he stepped away from the desk and walked off the set. The studio remained frozen in disbelief. Crew members hesitated, unsure how to proceed. The audience sat stunned, absorbing what they had just witnessed. Joy Behar, usually quick with a retort, sat uncharacteristically quiet. Within hours, clips of the confrontation circulated everywhere. Commentators debated whether Clooney's response had been justified or excessive. Supporters praised him for pushing back against what they saw as unnecessary hostility. Critics argued that the exchange had spiraled too far. Regardless of perspective, one thing was undeniable. The moment struck a nerve. It became a flashpoint in a larger conversation about the tone of public discourse. Viewers dissected not only the clash itself, but also what it represented. Questions about accountability, media responsibility, and the boundaries between tough questioning and personal attack. For many, the scene symbolized a breaking point. A prominent figure refusing to accept what he perceived as unfair treatment. A televised confrontation that exposed the tension between provocation and professionalism. By the time the broadcast ended, the atmosphere in the studio had irrevocably shifted. What began as a routine promotional appearance had transformed into one of the most talked about moments in daytime television, leaving behind lingering silence and a debate that would continue long after the cameras stopped rolling.